Question, Laura Trott.
Mr Speaker, to ask the Secretary of State for Education if she will make a statement on whether the Government will be accepting the School Teacher Review Body's pay recommendations for 25-26.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Speaker, my apologies. And might I start by thanking our teachers, leaders and school staff for all they're doing right now to ensure a successful exam season for students and for all their hard work throughout the year. Rather than scaremongering with fantasy statistics on this side of the House, we're getting on and delivering. We're already seeing positive signs that our plan for change is working. Teacher recruitment is up, 2,000 more people in training than last year. Teacher retention is up, thousands more teacher forecast to stay in the profession over the next 3 years. This Labour government is getting on and delivering. And that's why, unlike the opposition who last year sat on the STRB report, hid from their responsibility and left it for Labour to sort out, this afternoon we will announce the Teachers' Pay Award, which will be the earliest announcement for a decade, because we understand the importance of giving schools certainty, giving them time to plan their budgets and ensuring they can recruit and retain the expert teachers our children need. The Secretary of State's written ministerial statement will be coming out this afternoon, showing this Labour government once again is getting on and...
Order. Can I just say, you granted it to UQ. Please wait where you can ask the question. I don't want yourself and Mr Brown to be a bad example of this school class. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, because it is late before the House and it will be coming out this afternoon, showing once again this Labour government is getting on and delivering on our plan for change.
Right, Shadow Secretary of State, Laura Trott.
Mr Speaker, this is absolutely outrageous. It is astonishing that we've had to summon the government to the benches today and they cannot even tell us what the pay rise they're going to get and whether it's going to be funded. That is not allowing us to scrutinise this in this House. The government said they would tax private schools to fund £6,500 more teachers, but the reality is that state schools haven't got any of that money. Instead of that, we've had broken promises on compensating schools for the jobs tax, confirmation from DfE itself that there will be a shortfall in teachers' pay funding that we are not allowed to discuss here today in this urgent question, and uncertainty as to what the actual pay rise is for teachers. It is a disgrace, and it is the opposite of what people who voted for Labour expected. All of this in the final 2 weeks that head teachers up and down the country have to decide whether to make teachers redundant in time for September. In fact, sadly, many schools will have already made the difficult decision to let good teachers go. These are job losses on her watch, due to her inability to provide schools with the clarity that they need. And please, don't just take my word for it. Dan Moynihan from the Harris Federation say they are proposing to make 40 to 45 teachers redundant. John Coles, the Chief Executive of United Learning, who runs 90 state sector academies, said the trusts have been left with a £10.5 million a year of unfunded costs. He said it's no good the Treasury waving their hands and saying efficiency. That will be 400 job losses. Sector-wide, that would extrapolate to ruinous harm in one of the well-functioning public services, tens of thousands of redundancies. Simon Pink, the finance director at the Elliott Foundation, which has 36 primaries, said this is the toughest budget for a generation. And one secondary school head teacher has already had to cut 2 teaching assistant posts and a teacher role due to rising national insurance and anticipated wage rises. Mr Speaker, what is the pay rise that the government is recommending for teachers? The Prime Minister's spokesman said on the 28th of April that there will be no additional funding for pay. Yesterday, the government started to U-turn on winter fuel. Will she now fully U-turn and fund the national insurance rise and agree to fully fund the pay increases, whatever they are?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Neither I nor any minister in this government will take lessons from the members opposite, who, after 14 long years in power, had still not restored real-term spending in our schools to the level they inherited. The brass neck of the opposition is quite extraordinary. Members opposite would also do well to remember the difficult decisions that this government has had to take because of the utter mess they left behind. She was in the Treasury creating the mess. She knows very well what happened. Recruiting, retaining and supporting expert teachers is central to our vision for delivering high and rising standards in our school, and yet despite the challenging financial context, years of missed recruitment targets under the previous government, this administration is prioritising education and ensuring every child has access to a high-quality teacher. We are working at pace to ensure excellence for every child, and that's why we do remain committed to our manifesto pledge for 6,500 teachers, and to ensure that it does respond to the demand in secondary schools, special schools and in further education, because we know that high-quality teaching is the in-school factor that has the biggest positive impact on a child's outcomes, breaking down barriers to opportunity for every child. So clearly recruiting and retaining those high-quality teachers is absolutely central to our vision for delivering high and rising standards. That's why, despite the challenging financial context, years of missed recruitment targets, we're getting on and we're delivering on our plan for change. But she will have to wait, like everybody else, for the statement that she knows is coming this afternoon.
Chair of the Select Committee, Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Teacher pay is absolutely vital for the status of the profession, for quality of life of teachers and for recruitment and retention of the vital, skilled and qualified staff who are the backbone of our education system. It is really important that the government's response this afternoon begins the work of restoring teacher pay after the last 14 years, where we have seen on any objective measure a shocking erosion in teacher pay under the previous government, which has affected recruitment and retention and has had a devastating impact on teacher morale. And the benches opposite would take note, should take note of that, and we would all benefit from a little more humility in the context of the legacy that they left behind. But can I emphasise to the Secretary of State today, and can I press her, on the extent to which the pay award will be funded, because we know that there are extensive pressures already on school budgets and schools are very anxious about that matter. And can I also ask her about the question of support staff pay and whether the statement this afternoon will include support staff pay and whether it will also begin the process of restoring that, because we know how vital our teaching assistants and other support staff are in our schools as well.
Can I thank the Honourable Lady for her very thoughtful contribution, and I do find it somewhat disconcerting that she is being barracked from members opposite when she performs a really important function for this House and is, very assiduous in holding the government to account, and rightly so, that is her role. She quite rightly reflects upon the degradation of teachers' pay over the last 14 years. Indeed, the first thing this government did was get the STRB recommendation from last year out of the drawer and actually process it, something that the last government just hid and, quite frankly, ran away from. We implemented the 5.5% pay award. We absolutely recognise that this is a really important part of ensuring we have the high-quality teachers that we need. The starting salary for teachers is now at least £31,650 outside of London and at least £38,766 in inner London. And we are making progress. We are seeing the green shoots of more teachers joining the profession, more teachers staying in the profession, and we will continue to support that trajectory in any way we can. She rightly draws on the really vital work in schools of support staff too, and the government's approach in respect of that will indeed be confirmed, as will all of the details that the Honourable Lady so keenly anticipates in the written ministerial statement this afternoon.
Munira Wilson, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Each and every week I hear from teachers and school leaders in my own constituency and across the country. In my time in this place, never has their outlook been as gloomy as it is right now.
Absolutely.
After years of underfunding and neglect from the Conservatives, schools now face a double blow of underfunded national insurance increases and unfunded teacher pay rises, if the reports are to be believed. Together, these represent massive cuts to school budgets, and frankly, they expected better from Labour. School governors in my constituency recently told me they are all setting deficit budgets. One described it as beyond imagining.
Yep.
And that's why teachers are so desperately worried, and so are parents, because ultimately, Mr. Speaker, it is our children who will suffer, and the most vulnerable at that. The government's claim that schools can find the money through efficiencies simply doesn't stack up. Budgets are already cut to the bone, with schools relying on Amazon wish lists with parents for the basics such as glue sticks. They're cutting back subjects already, cancelling trips, cutting back on teaching assistants, which means children with SEND suffer the most, and now they are planning redundancies. Budget decisions for next year are already being made. We need urgent clarity if the pay rise will be funded. So will the Minister tell schools across the country where exactly are they expected to find this money?
I thank the Honourable Lady. There was an awful lot of imagining in her statement, and understandably so. Well, less understandably in terms of some of the content of what she said, but indeed the statement is due today, and she will have to await it, as will all members of this House. And indeed those who I know are keenly looking at their schools' budgets and ensuring that they can provide the best education possible. I know that's what schools are focused on doing, and rightly so, and we are focused on supporting them to do that. I would gently remind honourable members opposite that this is the earliest STRB announcement in a decade, because we recognise how important budgeting is for schools, how important it is that they have this information in a timely way that was not respected under the previous government. We want to give this information in good time, the time that we can possibly do in terms of early notice, so that they can plan those excellent outcomes for children that I know schools are striving for. And we will also support schools to use their funding as efficiently as possible. The department has worked on a whole suite of productivity initiatives, support with schools to manage energy costs, to manage banking costs, to minimise any expenditure that should be on the front line supporting children, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Sewards.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just to reiterate what my honourable friend, the chair of the Select Committee, said, teaching assistants are the glue that keep our classrooms together, and they should be paid adequately. Now, I really am pleased to hear the Minister state that retention is up with 2,000 more teachers in training. As a former teacher myself, I understand that workload, and she will know that workload is often cited as a reason that we don't retain teachers. Marking, lesson planning, admin, data entry, all of these activities keeping teachers away from spending time with their students. So can the Minister update us on what work her department is doing on AI and the rollout of AI in our classrooms to reduce teacher workload and get them in front of students?
I do welcome the really constructive nature of the honourable gentleman's question, because regardless of any announcement this afternoon, we know that schools are working hard to deliver for children, and we know that as a government we need to work our hardest, and we are, to support them to do so. And that means a whole range of productivity that will support teachers with their workload, support schools with their costs, making sure that we do grab the opportunity of technological developments to ensure that any teacher time is maximised with children in the classroom, helping them with their learning, and indeed being supported with technology to maximise that outcome for children. And so we'll continue to work. We are very much looking forward, and unfortunately the benches opposite just seem to constantly be looking back.
Dr. Caroline Johnson.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think for the government to come here today and say in full knowledge of what their pay rise intentions are, and to refuse to say so until this afternoon to avoid scrutiny is disrespectful to this House, every member, every constituent, every teacher, and if I may say so as well, Mr. Speaker, somewhat cowardly. Mr. Speaker, schools across my constituency find themselves short of money to cover the national insurance bills. 5 schools in my constituency that have approached me are £176,000 short between them. Does the Minister know how many schools are short of money to pay the national insurance bill?
On the Honourable Lady's initial comments, there are processes and procedures in this House that we respect, and we respect this House, and we will continue to do so. And there is a process by which this statement and these announcements will be made, and she will have to wait alongside everybody for the process that we adhere to in this House to be administered. On her second question, our funding system, and she should know this, is not designed so that every school and college receives funding which necessarily fully matches their precise spending. As that, including NIC costs, it varies from institution to institution because of the decisions that each school makes on its staffing. So we are providing schools and high-need settings with over £930 million in financial support in 2025-26 to support them with their increased national insurance costs, and that's in addition to the £2.3 billion increase to core school funding that was announced at the autumn budget in 2024, which means that the core schools budget, which includes the core revenue funding for schools and high needs, will total over £64.8 billion in 2025-26, and we will continue to support schools to spend that money in the most effective and productive way possible to maximise outcomes for children, which is our priority.
McKinnell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I spent most of the last government's time in office scrutinising public spending and grew weary of promises of pay or other impacts of government decisions not matched with budgets in schools and hospitals and elsewhere. I would hope that this government would be very honest about the challenges when things like national insurance and pay increases are made, about the impact on school budgets, and not have a headline on one not balanced on the other side with funding. So I hope she's making good arguments in the spending review, and also could she make sure she's really leaning into the issue of falling roles in London schools, where these, if any hoped for pay rise, very much deserved by teachers, has a double whammy because those school roles are falling and therefore their income is much lower. This has an extra impact on staffing decisions.
I thank the Right Honourable Lady for her question and for the work that she has done in this House over many years, scrutinising government budgets and holding governments to account. And we have the highest respect for schools, for school leaders, for the teachers and the support staff that work within schools. We recognise the challenges that are faced across the public sector in making sure that every public penny that is spent in the most efficient way possible, but also maximises the public benefit as far as possible. We are working incredibly hard in the department, as I know we are across government, to get maximum output for public money that, quite frankly, was the public sector was quite frankly neglected by the previous government over 14 years, and we are picking up the pieces of that, but we will continue to work hard to do so.
Sir Oliver Dowden.
Mr. Speaker, I do have some sympathy for the Honourable Lady, who I have a great deal of respect for, but surely she must feel embarrassed coming before this House, knowing all the answers to these questions and not giving them simply because Number 10 won't let her. And in my constituency, schools are already facing a double whammy from not fully funded increase in costs from national insurance rise and the pressure on places. Now, if this teacher's pay settlement isn't funded in full, surely she would admit this amounts to a cut. Whenever this happened when we were in government, the first thing they would say would be, are you matching it with funding? If you're not, they would scream for blue murder that it amounted to a cut. Will she just admit that if it's not funded, it is a cut to schools?
The Right Honourable Gentleman is rather getting ahead of himself. What I will say to his question, because he was in the last government, and we were left with an appalling inheritance, and we are taking tough decisions to fix the foundations, to bring back stability, because education is a priority for this government. That's why we are rebuilding the crumbling schools that they left. Fiction, crumbling schools. I would speak to the schools that are dealing with the consequences. Rolling out free breakfast clubs, opening up school-based nurseries, and yes, providing £8 billion to give every child the best start in life through high-quality early years and family services that the previous government promised with no money to deliver. So while the benches opposite continue to try and work out what they think, we are getting on with delivering real positive change in our country.
James Naish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my honourable friend says, we inherited a recruitment and retention crisis within the teaching industry. I think the NAHT's data says that 1 in 3 teachers leaves within 5 years, and around 1 in 3 head teachers also no longer continues as a head within 5 years. That is a situation we have inherited, not created. And therefore, can I ask the Minister, what is she doing to turn the tide on that recruitment and retention crisis?
We did inherit a dire situation with children not being taught by the expert teachers that they should, and with teachers stretched to the limit, which is why the first thing we did was reset that relationship between government and schools, which for years had been some sort of combat. We want to work with schools. We recognise how hard schools are working to deliver for children. We want to work with them to ensure that we can support in any way we can as a government. And that means having high-quality teachers. That means having good quality teacher training. That means supporting teachers to meet the needs of children with special educational needs and disabilities, and support every teacher to be trained in order to do so. It means maximising every pound to go to the front line, to the children, by reducing other costs within schools, and we'll continue to work with schools to do that so that we can ensure that every child has the expert teacher that they deserve and will not be let down anymore like they have been for the last 14 years.
Caroline.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we'd all agree that education is the best investment that any government can make, raising people out of poverty, improving social mobility, improving health outcomes. Sadly, not a priority with the last government, and I welcome the change in tone from the new government, although I think it will take more than breakfast clubs to fix it. In Devon, the Head Teachers Association have said we are on our knees, and primary schools are consolidating classes because they're having to cut spending. One secondary school in my patch is going to have to pay £95,000 extra for every percentage rise in pay if it is not funded. So if the pay award is not fully funded, can the Minister explain to me exactly where schools are supposed to find this extra money?
The Honourable Lady, as understandably so, given the calling of this urgent question, despite a statement due imminently, is getting ahead of herself. We're doing an awful lot more than breakfast clubs. I mean, I've listed just some of what we're doing, but we are working incredibly hard across the board. And I think that, schools will work very hard to make sure that their budget maximises the outcomes for children, and we'll continue to support them to do that. But that means a department that steps up. It doesn't stand back and criticise, it steps up. It supports help in the buying that schools do, making sure that they're getting the best value for money out of all the purchasing they make. It means supporting them with their maintenance and management within schools. It means supporting with energy costs. We know that energy is a big expenditure for schools, and the department can support with good contracts that get much better value for money for schools. Similarly on banking, similarly on teacher vacancies. Schools can save a significant amount of money using the products that are available from the Department for Education and continuing to do so, and to use the tools that are available to see how they are doing and what other schools are doing well also. We'll continue to support schools to maximise the impact on children.
Can I just say, it's like having a second statement. The answers are getting longer and longer, and I've got to get through because I know we've got a lot of other business. It's important we do get the questions answered quickly, but also, as well, the questions are going to be asked. Now then, I'm going to have a good example of brief. Laurence, Tyne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's clearly been some learning loss on the benches opposite, because they were late in submitting evidence for 7 years in a row, causing chaos in school budgets. They announced the outcome of the STRB process through written statements to this House, and they shamefully scrapped the school support staff negotiating body. Does she agree that the protestations from the benches opposite will come across to teachers as false and hypocritical, because they are?
I think the honourable gentleman put it very well.
No. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, one of the things that I think we should be proudest of in England is the success of English schools over the last 10 to 14 years. Frankly, the difference in outcome in England from Labour-run Wales or SNP-run Scotland has been really very striking, demonstrating the brilliance of teachers across the United Kingdom, sure, but the different systems that have enabled those in England to flourish. Now, while I do welcome the fact that she's bringing this statement out early, and I appreciate the work that the government has done on that, I'm afraid I do share with my right honourable friend and my honourable friend who's no longer in her place the frustration that she must appreciate from when she was sitting on these benches only a few months ago, and no doubt will be in only a few years' time. That the reality is that it's very, very difficult. That it's very, very difficult to be able to represent those who send us here if we're not given the information. Now, I was sent a letter by Simon Beamish, who runs the Lee Academy Trust, and he's already told me that in schools in West Kent, in my area, they're going to have to make redundancies or make choices based on the unfunded pledges that have already been given. Will she make the commitment that the next pledges will be funded?
Minister, that was a very...
It was a very long statement. It managed to almost entirely look backwards whilst fantasising about the future. He will receive the information, as will everybody else, when the statement is published at the announced time this afternoon.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I declare an interest as a primary school governor right up until the election, and also as the chair for the APPG for schools. It is quite shocking, really, to hear from the opposition benches protestations about school funding, given the absolute dire state they left school funding in after 14 years of Conservative government. When I speak to school leaders in my constituency, they do tell me of the real and lasting struggles they've had to balance their budgets. So I understand that the Minister can't speak today about the outcome of the review until the statement, but I wonder if she can give us some more information more broadly about conversations she's had as part of the spending review, so that we can get the funding we need to invest in schools and turn around the dire state that we inherited.
Can I take this opportunity to put on record my thanks to school governors. The Honourable Gentleman mentioned that he had been a governor up until the election. We really are grateful to school governors for everything they do on a voluntary basis to support schools to be as good as they can be. And as a government, we will always work with them and schools to support improving outcomes for children. And we will do everything we can as a department within the incredibly tight fiscal constraints that we have inherited as a government. We are committed to our public services that we know will transform the lives of children and indeed everybody in this country, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister, in her response to my honourable friend, the member for Twickenham, referred to imaginings, but I don't think it's imaginings to suggest that the Secretary of State, in her response to the STRB, said that some efficiency savings would have to be found in schools to meet the additional costs. Earlier on this week, I met with a round table of head teachers from my constituency in Chelmsford and beyond. Now, the Minister also said just now about fantasising about the future. Is she really telling me that those head teachers are fantasising about the future when they told me that they're having to make cuts already to staffing numbers for next September, and then one head teacher told me that just one or two things more need to go wrong and they are on the brink of collapse? Is she saying that they are fantasising about the future?
No.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sorry, I'm getting confused. The Minister said no, sat down, you stood up. Had you not finished, Minister?
Apologies, Mr. Speaker.
No, for my benefit. Thank you.
Apologies, Mr. Speaker. No. We recognise how important it is for schools to plan their budgets. We know that they are keenly awaiting the announcement this afternoon. That's why we have made the announcement as quickly as possible and much quicker than at any point over the last 10 years, and we will continue to work with schools to help them deliver for the children in their care, and that we know that is their priority, and it's our priority too.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For 14 years, I saw my profession treated like dirt by the party opposite, undervalued, underpaid and undermined at every single turn. Would the Secretary of State agree with me that not only should we be paying our teachers fairly, we should be treating them with respect? And the only decent teacher recruitment the party opposite did was recruiting former teachers to these benches.
The honourable gentleman quite rightly remarks on his service as a teacher, and that it is incredibly valued. And I think the one message we want to send to the schools system is the extent to which we do value teachers. We value head teachers that support their schools to thrive. We support the support staff that are the beating heart of schools in every community, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The schools in my constituency tell me that any efficiencies they could possibly have made have already been made, and therefore the results of what the Minister is announcing, a national insurance that's underfunded, and this unfunded, welcome but unfunded increase in teacher pay can only mean that teacher numbers are cut. And as the father of a primary school teacher who works really hard and is absolutely committed, that impacts on me personally, and it will impact on every child and every parent in my constituency. Isn't that the reality? And shouldn't the government be upfront and admit that this will mean that teachers will lose their jobs?
The honourable gentleman will have to wait for the statement this afternoon to know the details of what the government is proposing. But he really should have more awareness of the situation that teachers and schools and indeed our entire public sector have faced over the last 14 years. We are working hard to clean up the mess, and we'll continue to do so.
A.O. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also declare that I am a school governor. In South and East Rushcliffe, I spent many months sort of meeting teachers and governors and stakeholders within the community. So I welcome the government's announcement of 2,000 additional teachers. Can the Minister tell us how the government is turning the tide in the crisis of teacher recruitment and retention, which we know reached unprecedented levels over the last decade?
I thank the honourable gentleman. This really is a key priority for us, making sure that we have the teaching workforce that we know children deserve, but also that we know teachers deserve too. They deserve to have a full fleet of teachers teaching the specialist subjects that they love and that they are committed to and trained to teach. We also know that it is key to unlocking the outcomes for children to have good qualified teachers in every classroom, and that's what we're legislating to achieve as well. And we also know it's key for children who have additional learning needs or disabilities to make sure that every teacher is a teacher of special educational needs and disabilities, so that more children can be educated in their local school with their peers, getting the outcomes that they deserve.
Helen Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was a school governor for 13 years and served as a finance governor, so I know these issues well, and I want to draw the Minister's attention to the plight of small rural primary schools. In my constituency of Bristol and Woodstock, there are many, and they are really up against it in the costs that they have to face. 86% of the budget in the school that I served was spent on staffing. So seeing a significant unfunded increase in that staffing, whether it's through national insurance or salary contributions, has a huge impact. Yeah. Will the Minister agree to meet with me to discuss sparsity funding and the equalisation of per capita funding so that primary schools in small rural areas are not so serially disadvantaged?
Yeah. Can I thank him for his thoughtful question and also his years of service as a governor. Indeed, I can't reiterate any more how much we value the work that governors do in schools, and we need more people to step up and have the rewarding opportunity to support schools in that capacity. He rightly raises challenges that we know differ across schools, which is why the school funding isn't uniform across schools. It varies according to circumstances, and we are looking at the funding formula to make sure that it does allocate that resource where it is most needed, where it can give the greatest outcome and the greatest benefit.
Rachel Massell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rather than the synthetic outrage by the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, who resided in a government which brought cuts to schools, I really do welcome the fact that this government is serious about addressing the regression teachers faced in their pay, but also support staffs pushed onto minimum wage. I trust that in this statement there will be sufficiency in funding for schools, but will she also get a grip of chief executive pay, which is escalating in double figures, meanwhile they've got six-figure salaries. So it's really important that they're not taking more out of the funds, which needs to be invested in those children's education.
Minister.
The Honourable Lady speaks with great insight. I know she cares passionately about these issues of maximising the outcomes for children, and I know that every school leader will want to ensure that any decisions they make on pay, indeed at any level within a school, but particularly at the senior level, that they will be prioritising the children and the outcomes for them in any of those decisions that they make.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Schools in my Huntingdon constituency are telling me they're struggling with serious pressure being put on their staffing budgets, not only by the national insurance contribution increase, but also exacerbated by the appallingly slow approval rate of SENIF and EHCPs by now Lib Dem-run Cambridgeshire County Council. What is the Minister doing to address that extra strain on staffing costs and ensuring that schools are properly resourced to have the right level of staff to allow teachers to give the best education to all children, rather than forcing efficiency savings that will make the job even harder and possibly even ultimately put children at risk?
The honourable gentleman raises a really important point and has done so very thoughtfully and constructively, because we recognise that whilst there is synthetic outrage from some parts of the benches opposite, we recognise that schools are grappling with ensuring the greatest outcomes for their budget, and that is a challenge that they rise to year on year, and it's a challenge that we will continue to set, because we won't shy away from ensuring that every public penny that is spent delivers on the front line for children, delivers for teachers, that we have them in the right capacity within our school, but also that they have the training to support children with special educational needs. We are determined that more children get that education with their peers in a mainstream setting, but we recognise the schools need support to deliver that, and we are working on reforms at pace, whilst getting on with also delivering a whole range of interventions for schools to support them in making progress already.
Mr. Speaker. I hadn't planned to speak on this statement, but I have to say I was pretty surprised by the tone the opposition struck. I'll never forget doing my PGC and finding one of my professional mentors, a teacher for years, crying at her desk because of the pressures that they put her under, and many teachers across our country. Isn't it the case that they left our teachers overstretched and undervalued, and this is a government that is taking a different approach?
I couldn't put it better myself.
Claire Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister has admitted that not all schools will be fully funded, but blames that on choices the school have made about their staff. Does the Minister accept that schools cannot fully control the profile of their staff? That in some cases, as in a letter I've written to the Minister, that schools make choices to pay people in higher bands because of the increasingly high level of needs that they're being expected to support? And will she meet with me to discuss how she will protect those schools that have particularly high staffing budgets from having to make excessive cuts?
I'm not really sure about the premise of the Honourable Lady's question, or what she thinks may or may not have been said ahead of a written ministerial statement that is due to be published at 1 p.m. today. What I have made clear is that schools are not funded in a uniform manner, but are funded according to a whole range of requirements that they may have within their school population and within their local area, and it's a complex formula, and it's intended to ensure fairness across the school funding system. But indeed, we are looking at it to ensure that it is as fair as it can be. But that is it's not without its complexity. So we're taking the time to get that right, and we'll continue to do so because we recognise that schools do need the autonomy to decide how they spend their budget, how they best deploy their resources, how they best maximise the outcomes for children from the resources that are allocated by the government. But we do recognise that they need support to do that as well, and we will continue to ensure that they have the tools available to maximise their outcomes for children.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I declare my interest as a very proud father of Rosie, a foundation stage teacher. This government, Mr. Speaker, showed what Labour is about when it came in and immediately awarded above inflation 5.5 rise to start clawing back the demeaning and disrespectful public sector cuts of around 20% in real terms delivered by the Tories. The Government 2.8 submission to the peer review body is below the latest current rate of inflation and is not funded through additional finance and will come at the expense of other provision. It's been reported that the school teachers peer review body is recommending close to 4%. So will the Government commit to a long-term plan of restoring teachers' pay in real terms and address the recruitment and retention crisis in education?
He tempts me down all sorts of paths of anticipating the statement that is due later, but he quite rightly recognises the importance of ensuring that teachers are recognised, are valued, are rewarded, that we do have sufficient teachers, that we have an attractive profession, that bright people like Rosie want to join, want to contribute to, and will continue to work to deliver that for the children and the schools in this country.
Speaker, one of the biggest drivers of satisfaction of any profession is where the settlement meets inflation and expectations of inflation. What assurance can the Minister give the House on whether the settlement that is announced later today will take account of the vastly higher inflation rate than would have been anticipated when this settlement was actually resolved?
I'm afraid the member will have to wait for the statement this afternoon. I appreciate it is keenly anticipated, but we are committed to ensuring schools can deliver for children. That is our top priority.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to declare an interest that I'm the son of a teacher. I know that while the Tories often wax lyrical about how business adds value to our economy, which of course it does, They often omit to say that it is our teachers who educate those who go on to work in business, and they add huge value, and it should be the most esteemed of professions.
Yeah.
So can the Minister explain how Labour is overturning the teacher recruitment and retention crisis that we inherited from the party opposite?
He's absolutely right to identify that we inherited a crisis. We inherited a teaching profession in crisis. We immediately, on entering government, instituted the 5.5% pay award. We continue to support teachers to manage, schools to find ways to support teachers in managing workload, in managing well-being, in making teaching the attractive profession it should be that, as he rightly points out, is the springboard to so many bright futures for children, but we want to ensure that's for every child, excellence for every child, not just some children, as we've seen over the last 14 years.
Richard Holden.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Education questions. I raised concerns from head teachers in Basildon and Billericay about school funding, and also directly questions from school support staff already being told they're being made redundant because of the National Insurance Jobs Tax. Exactly. Can the Minister explain to them and to me why this government has gone back on its promise to ensure that all the costs of the jobs tax will be covered by this government?
The government has, as I've already set out, has given a significant settlement in recognition of the national insurance costs. We'll continue to work with schools to ensure that they can deliver for children in their areas, and we'll continue to listen to the sector as well to ensure that we work in partnership to deliver for children, a partnership that was sadly lacking in the last 14 years, and he was very much part of a government that delivered on the desperate situation that we have found schools and teachers to be in, and one that we are working very hard to turn around.
John Mill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the last 6 months, I've visited most of the schools in my constituency of Horsham, and the message I am getting loud and clear is that they are on the brink, especially over SEND provision, which threatens to throw into sharp reverse any progress in educational standards. I asked the government to be honest about the real state of funding, and that we don't make statements that are not fully funded, and that applies to existing services such as SEND provision and the cost of school dinners. I do hold the new government to a higher standard, and I ask her to be completely honest about the real state of affairs. Thank you.
I thank the honourable gentleman and recognise the challenges that he sees within the school system. We did, without doubt, inherit a SEND crisis. It was described by the previous Secretary of State for Education as lose, lose, lose. And she wasn't wrong. And we are working at pace to fix it. And we recognise that schools are grappling with many challenges, and we'll continue to support them to do that, because we know that that is how we deliver for the children in this country, which is what we are committed to do.
The honourable members just walked right across. I can't believe that. Please. The Minister was answering. We're not going to have an argument. As a member of the panel, I hope that you would respect the rules better of the House. Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm full of admiration for all the hard-working teachers across the Mid-Buckinghamshire constituency and indeed across the whole country, and should say my sister-in-law is a secondary school English teacher. But I have no doubt that every single teacher and head teacher, either watching this live or watching it back later, their jaws will have been on the floor to hear the Minister say that she wants to give them time to plan but won't tell them what funding settlement they are actually going to get to pay for it. It is inconceivable that she doesn't know the answer to those questions for a statement to be published at 1 o'clock. So perhaps she can answer. Is it, as my right honourable friend for Hertsmere said, that Number 10 have told her not to? Or perhaps better still, is it because the department is in a live negotiation, or some might say row, with the Treasury to try and get that settlement for our teachers?
What a ridiculous question. And as somebody who has a family member who is a teacher, he should have more respect for their profession, for the work that they do, and also more acknowledgement of the fact that we are delivering the planning time for schools in terms of their budgeting, way above anything his government delivered in the last 10 years.
Charlie Maynard.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister and many in the Chamber have mentioned teaching support staff. They make up half of the school workforce, yet have no statutory pay body to represent them, and many support staff are left without a voice in discussions on their pay, terms and working conditions. I hear this time and time again in my Witney constituency and schools throughout that. Will the Minister give assurances that the school support staff will get a fair pay deal in this written ministerial statement?
Yeah.
He is right that the pay negotiations for support staff are as part of the National Joint Council for Local Government Services. We recognise the challenge that he also identifies, which is why we have legislated for the school support staff negotiating body to be re-established, which the last government abolished, to ensure that support staff do have that strong voice as part of these conversations, because we recognise that strong role that they have within our schools.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I take this opportunity to raise the concerns about our further education college teachers, because there's a real shortage of skilled workers in this country, and one of the reasons for that we have an undervaluing and in turn underinvestment on our FE college teachers. In fact, they are paid £9,000 less than their peers, and no wonder 50% of them leave within the first 3 years of employment. So does the Minister recognise the vital role of our FE college teachers in our education system, and will they be in the government's plans for a fairer and better future for everybody? Thank you, Minister.
We absolutely recognise the vital role that all of those who work with 16 to 19-year-olds, whether that's in a school setting, whether that's in a college, in an FE setting, and to ensure that they are respected and valued, and really do provide that springboard for young people, or indeed people of all ages as well, to launch into their future careers, and we'll continue to recognise and support the sector.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister mentioned the maintenance contracts and the DfE support for them. Schools have seen steep increases in the costs of sustaining themselves. One school leader in Devon who I spoke with said the costs of maintaining grounds, bins and toilets grew by 69% over the last 4 years. Given that schools' budgets have barely grown over that period, does the Minister really expect that staff pay rises will come out of existing school budgets?
The honourable gentleman again tempts me into issues that may well be addressed in the statement that is due very shortly. And he also recognises that schools have a whole range of costs to manage, and as a department we absolutely want to maximise every penny that schools have to minimise those outlays that may not be reaching the children or indeed the front line of those who work with the children, and we'll continue to do that. And there is a whole range of tools available at the department, and we really encourage schools to use the tools that are available to manage their budgets and support really smart accounting in any way they can to maximise the impact that they can have for the children in their schools.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for her answers to the UQ this morning. I think nobody can doubt the Minister's commitment to finding the change that is needed, necessary to keep the schools working and keep the teachers in place. To be helpful always, as I try to in the Chamber if I can, in relation to the questions, having come through a period of teachers' strike action in Northern Ireland, which led to years of no school inspections and classroom practices altered, there is a need to re-engage with teachers. The Minister knows well that engaging with teachers at all stages is essential, as the losers are undoubtedly the parents and of course the pupils. And how will the Minister ensure that a spirit of cooperation in the practices for in-depth education, which we all hope will be reciprocated by unions and senior leadership teams within all of the schools? Thank you.
The honourable gentleman is indeed always helpful and thoughtful in his contributions. And as a department, we inherited a school system that was in crisis. School buildings crumbling, teachers leaving in their droves, children not getting the start in life that they deserve. So we are working along a number of fronts, but we recognise, indeed, these are not outcomes the government can deliver, we need to deliver them in partnership with schools, with teachers, with those that represent them, and we speak and work regularly right across the board to maximise those outcomes for children, which I know he shares our determination to see across the country.
That completes the urgent question. Relevant to this.
It is relevant.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier on in this session, the Minister said, and I'm sure this was an innocent verbal slip, that funding had remained below 2010 levels. But according to the widely respected Institute for Fiscal Studies, coming on the back of an 11% real terms increase in spending per pupil between 1920 and 24-25, this allows spending per pupil to return to and exceed its previous high point in 2010. How can we encourage the rapid correction of the record when innocent mistakes are made?
I think you've just corrected the record as it's on a point of order. I think we can leave it at that unless the Minister wants to come back. If not, let the front benches change it.